devastating role in the game's story, where the roles of villain and heroes involving Team Magma and Team Aqua are opposite of Pokemon Ruby, and instead of launching Hoenn in an endless drought, Kyogre was about to flood the entire region. And honestly, I don't know which one would have been a worse fate. Some fans, of course, may also remember it alongside Groudon on the box art of Pokemon Coliseum, and Sheer coding the Land Titan in the game's intro, as well as the Robo Kyogre used to jet over to Dark Isle and defeat Cypher in Pokemon XD, the Ludicolo Chronicles Volume 2, I mean Gale of Darkness. Today we find out if Kyogre swept up a storm in the competitive scene or if it merely drizzled out. So without further ado, let's find out how good was Kyogre actually. And in this video we'll be going over these competitive formats. Kyogre absolutely reigned over its debut generation, no pun intended. If you didn't resist water or have fantastic special defense, you were at risk of being drowned. Plus, Kyogre wasn't merely about brute force, as it could even run a substitute calm mindset and absolutely destroy Blissey. Its greatest nemesis, the Soul Dew Lati twins, are so good mostly because they are the only way to offensively check Kyogre. Kyogre isn't the king of Ubers for nothing though. While they are bulky, Ice Beam chunks them really hard and forces recover to let a threatening teammate like Snorlax, Regice, or Metagross come in for free. Kyogre can also run Thunder Wave, and the Latis sometimes ran Refresh just to shrug it off, but all it took was one nasty 25 chance to kick in for it to be trouble. But Kyogre also made a good partner with the Lati twins, because against teams that relied on steals to block the Eon duo, Kyogre would enter easily and cause havoc. But of course, one cannot speak of Kyogre without mentioning its counterpart Groudon. Their clashing weathers are the most symbolic Ubers dynamic of all time, and also what gives the tier so much of its identity. Groudon, of course, could not come into Kyogre except if it wanted to be risky on a predicted Thunder, but Kyogre also did not want to bear the brunt of a powerful Earthquake on its weaker physical defense, so they had to be careful around each other. On the other hand, they also made excellent partners because they both baited in and messed with the Lati twin, and their solid overall bulk, enabling them to take most hits in a pinch, could be game-breaking among their brutally powerful peers such as Mewtwo, Deoxys Attack, and Rayquaza. Kyogre also enabled the occasional Swift Swim offense, with Omastar being a favorite for its sheer power, extreme speed resistance for Deoxys Attack, and spike support, while Ludicolo had decent defensive typing, and in general being able to outspeed and thus efficiently offensively respond to the terrifying Deoxys Attack, which was amazing. And with that, with so much sheer power, a variety of sets, and the ability to support Pokemon that are devastating in the rain, Kyogre shaped and defined the Uber tier in its debut generation. The number one rule that newcomers to Diamond and Pearl Ubers are taught before all else is that you absolutely must respect Choice Specs Kyogre's Water Spout, the most powerful attack in the game that tears open absolutely everything. Even maximum bulk Blissey gets 2-hit KO'd by a mile. In fact, for Kyogre, there are no counters, only checks. The best go-to checks on most teams are Palkia and Latias. The former has solid bulk and a quadruple water resist, and yet it's still 3-hit KO'd. But this temporary measure tends to be enough thanks to Kyogre's longevity. Even with Soul Dew, Latias is 2-hit KO'd, but it's able to check Kyogre because it terrifies it with Thunder and can recover on the switch. Of course, they had to be wary of its brutal Ice Beam, especially since it could use it against Groudon and barely be predicting. However, some teams got by with less checks, relying instead on constant offensive pressure, especially lead Deoxys speed teams that started the game at a breakneck pace by laying hazards and following up with one nuclear bomb of an attack after another, including Kyogre itself. Now, Kyogre's speed is not tremendous, as some faster newcomers appeared such as Palkia, Garchomp, and Darkrai, while the base 90 crowd expanded with Dialga, Giratina Origin, and Lucario, meaning Kyogre would have to run timid just to potentially tie, and in the process lose some power, though it is doubtful that anyone ever said, "Oh gee, my 399 special attack, 150 base power move boosted by Stab, Rain, and Choice Specs just isn't strong enough." Even with Stealth Rocks cutting into its power, at higher ranges it still remains stronger than Hydro Pump and Surf. And of course, Kyogre could just switch over to these without much issue against faster teams, whereas slower teams would struggle to punish it for using Water Spout. Stealth Rock cutting into Kyogre's health was more relevant in passively putting it into KO range from other Pokemon and limiting the amount of destruction it could pull off, which was representative on a broader scale of the fast-paced Diamond and Pearl metagame that made the previous generation's Ubers look like Yu-Gi. Of course, it being in KO range of something wasn't always the deciding factor, because Kyogre was also one of the best choice scarfers in the metagame. It traded raw crushing power against defense for the ability to mop offense up. Palkia and Latias were able to take its hits better, but Kyogre also got more opportunities to rain death down on their team because even without a boost, it was a one-hit KO machine against your average Pokemon, even in Ubers. Think Groudon, Mewtwo, Darkrai, and of course the bevy of OU Steel types that attempted to hold off the bevy of Dragons, except now it was a speedy one-hit KO machine. In addition to hazards, priority like Giratina Origin's Shadow Sneak and Rayquaza and Lucario's Extreme Speed, faster choice scarfers like Palkia and Garchomp, and taking a hit with something like Dialga or Giratina Origin was how offensive teams staved it off. Swift Swim offense was even more viable this time around with the addition of Life Orb and better stabs, meaning Kingdra and Kabutops joined the fray and ran over opponents with ease. Kyogre could also go defensive with a bold Calm Mind Rest Talk set, but this wasn't as common. It was a good backup check to Groudon that could absorb sleep from Darkrai and pose an offensive threat via boosting and healing off attacks. A nice set of qualities for some stall teams. However, what Kyogre was always most known for was its gargantuan offense that was always at the forefront of the tier. In VGC 2010, 4 restricted Pokemon were allowed, and you better believe everyone was spamming Kyogre like no tomorrow. It had it all: power, bulk, provided rain support, and had stab spread moves. Its Scarf Water Spout was a little much to handle, so people looked for creative ways to deal with it, such as Ludicolo, who was everywhere as both a counter and a partner. And for more information on Ludicolo, you can check out our Ludicolo video. But there was also Hitmontop, with access to Fake Out, Wide Guard, Helping Hand, and Feint. Hitmontop made for one of the best partners for Kyogre, in helping it do more damage or preventing enemy Kyogre from steamrolling everything. Life Orb Technician Mach Punch also meant Abomasnow couldn't freely be a punk and standing in the way of the watery assault. These became an iconic pairing for the 2010 season, and as such was dubbed Top Ogre. Now, the combo was less common by worlds, but Kyogre itself certainly wasn't, as it held all of the top 4 and the 6th spot, used respectively by 2010 champion Ray Rizzo, runner-up Yasuki Tochigi, 3rd place is Sao Yoshioka, 4th place Wataru Onishi, and 6th place Takashi Morishima. So yeah, surprise surprise, Kyogre was amazing in the first year that VGC allowed restricted Pokemon. However, several things changed for Weather God Kyogre in Generation 5. The incredible Ferrothorn appeared with the most ideal defensive typing, stats, and move pool possible for the tier. And part of why it was so great was that the incredible Kyogre finally had a counter. Now sure, even Ferrothorn couldn't handle Choice Specs Water Spout, but really little could. And other than that, it was just about perfect. However, it was also an amazing Kyogre partner, since it resisted Thunder, and it loved its fire weakness being cut in half, while also providing spikes for Kyogre to abuse. Kyogre also gained Scald, which made its bold Calm Mind sets even more imposing, since it could dish out a ton of residual damage just by spamming its stab, weakening its counters, and being really tough to break on the physical side. However, it had to be careful of the new sleep mechanics, and as such, this set was more niche. Rain Dish Tentacruel was also a tremendous addition, helping to relieve some hazard pressure with Rapid Spin, setting and absorbing the dreaded Toxic Spikes, and providing a backup check to Scarf Kyogre. Finally, Arceus was fully released, and Kyogre's relationship with its many forms fluctuated. Of course, it didn't enjoy Grass being such a good check, though Ferrothorn and Tentacruel tended to feast on it. Electric Arceus was good in part because it sliced through Kyogre. Arceus Ghost prevented spin blocking, but hated Toxic Spikes. However, Kyogre stood in the way of the fearsome variants like Fighting, Ground, and Dark that were more anti-metagame. Then in Black and White 2, Kyogre remained a crucial part of offensive teams, but it also had a new set discovered, the specially defensive Roar variant. This was the amazing Darkrai counter the metagame needed, and it was also one of the few Pokemon capable of switching into Choice Specs Kyurem White without being completely eviscerated. This rejuvenated defensive teams, which had been falling by the wayside in favor of the fast-paced Genesect action, but now had a tool that planted itself firmly in front of them and was tough to bring down. This becoming such a popular set in spite of the terrible sleep mechanics spoke volumes to how important and effective it was. And once again, Kyogre racks up another gen as the most influential Pokemon in the metagame. Despite weather being made impermanent in Generation 6, Kyogre remained tremendous. Bulky Defog Arceus forms rose to the forefront of the metagame and made for balanced teams that didn't do much in the way of damage, which in conjunction with the field often cleared of hazards meant that Specs Kyogre had a ton of opportunities to switch in and rip things up. While Xerneas was the new #1 in town, Kyogre was not far behind it. But then of course Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came around and flipped everything on its head with the introduction of the Primals. Suddenly Groudon was the best Pokemon in the metagame, and it even liked to switch into Kyogre because Desolate Land will activate and evaporate Kyogre's water moves, which is Groudon's greatest type weakness. And with Primal Groudon on every single team, Kyogre fell to the wayside, despite its massive stats. Of course, Primal Kyogre's new ability, Primordial Sea, is the rain counterpart to Desolate Land, but even then, switching into Groudon to replace Desolate Land with Primordial Sea was an even less attractive prospect, since Kyogre's defense had stayed the same, while Groudon's attack shot way up, and Earthquake was powered up into Precipice Blades. Mega Salamence was a commanding number 2, and Xerneas continued to dominate. Thus, for the first time ever, Kyogre fell behind in usage by a pretty notable amount. It did, however, have a few tricks up its sleeve, and resurged once it was discovered that Kyogre had a monstrous new 150 base attack stat, access to Earthquake, and happened to lure in Groudon, who now bore a ground weakness like nobody's business. With Thunder Wave, it easily disabled Lati Twins and Megaments, with Avalanche to pile on the hurt. Paralysis alongside Waterfall's flinch rate was pretty nice for emergencies too, and it usually only need one because Waterfall seriously hurt just about everything. It could lure Groudon either like this or with special sets if one was willing to be a bit more patient in exchange for stronger hits on everything else, and a more realistic sweeping chance with Calm Mind. The now Stealth Rock neutral, non-healing Groudon couldn't make too many Ice Beams, and wearing it down could help remove a Xerneas roadblock, making for a high-powered synergistic offensive combination. Overall, Gen 6 was actually a step back for Kyogre, but Kyogre's worst is still catastrophically powerful, and a trainer who knew what they were doing could easily prey on someone who took the Titan of the Seas for granted as no longer a threat. One of the most important dynamics of 26